She almost became a breeding machine, until the human waiting in line saved her. The line inside the conquered allocation facility was famous for two things. It never moved fast, and it never explained itself. Irelia stood in it anyway. The floor beneath her feet was smooth and pale, glowing softly as if it wanted to appear friendly. Tall arches curved overhead, humming with quiet energy. Hundreds of beings stood shoulder to shoulder, each inside their own faintly glowing boundary circle. No one spoke. Talking was allowed, but experience had taught them it was useless. The screens above repeated the same sentence in dozens of languages. Please wait. Your future is being processed. Irelia already knew what her future was. She had known since the genetic survey on her homeworld, since the polite smiles, since the sudden interest from distant offices that had never cared about her people before. Her biology was rare, valuable, efficient. The kind of word that followed her now felt heavy and cold. She folded her hands to keep them from shaking. Every few minutes, a soft chime sounded and someone vanished from the front of the line, guided away by floating markers. They never came back. No one screamed. No one resisted. That was how the system worked, clean, calm, and final. Irelia tried not to think about where they went. Behind her, someone shifted. She glanced back, careful not to step outside her boundary circle. The being behind her was human. She knew that because humans were still unusual enough to notice. Taller than most in the hall, soft-skinned, no visible markings, no obvious enhancements. He wore plain clothing and carried no tools, no badges of rank. He looked bored. That surprised her more than anything else. Most people in the line looked frightened, numb, or resigned. The human, his identification label read Caleb Morgan, was calmly observing the ceiling as if waiting for public transport. "You are not afraid?" she asked before she could stop herself. The human looked down, startled, then smiled slightly. "I am," he said. "I just learned a long time ago that looking afraid rarely helps." His voice was calm, simple, no authority, no threat. Irelia nodded and turned back around. Speaking felt dangerous, even if it wasn't forbidden. The chime sounded again. The line moved forward one step. Her circle glided with her. As she advanced, her heart beat faster. Each step brought her closer to the consultation chambers. She had read about them. They were not interrogation rooms. They did not shout or punish. They explained. They persuaded. They processed. They did not ask what you wanted. A floating panel drifted into her field of vision, lighting up with her identification code. Lines of text scrolled faster than she could read, but some words stood out. Genetic classification, prime utilization category, reproductive support. She swallowed. A smaller line appeared beneath it, autonomy, and when essential her breath caught. Behind her, Caleb frowned. "That's strange," he said quietly. She did not respond. The panel vanished as if embarrassed to have been noticed. The line moved again. They were closer now. She could see the consultation chambers, wide, open spaces with curved seating and gentle lighting. They looked comfortable, even welcoming. The beings inside sat while officials spoke to them in calm voices. Some nodded. Some looked confused. Some looked relieved, as if the decision had already lifted a weight from them. Irelia felt no relief. Her species valued family and choice. To create life was considered sacred, something shared willingly. The idea of being assigned, scheduled, optimized, it felt like being hollowed out and left standing. Another step forward. She noticed the human was still behind her. "You could ask for reassignment," she said softly, not turning around. "Humans are usually placed in labor or research sectors, safer ones." "I could," Caleb replied, "but then I wouldn't see what happens here." That made her pause. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, "systems tell you a lot about themselves when you wait in their lines." Before she could ask more, a gentle tone sounded directly in her ears. "Irelia of the LUMEI clusters. Please enter consultation chamber 3. Her boundary circle dissolved. For a moment her legs would not move. Caleb stepped forward slightly, then stopped, careful not to cross into her space. "Good luck," he said. She nodded once and walked toward the chamber. Inside, the air was warmer. The walls shifted colors slowly like a calm sky. 3 figures waited for her, 2 organic administrators and 1 central interface column. None of them smiled, but none of them frowned either. "Irelia," one administrator said kindly. "Please sit." She sat. "We have reviewed your file," the second administrator continued. "Your genetic profile indicates exceptional compatibility across multiple species. This is a rare honor." Honor. The word felt wrong. "The Conquered requires diversity and sustainability," the interface added. "Your contribution will benefit millions." "What choice do I have?" Irelia asked. The administrators exchanged a brief glance. "Choice is a complex concept," the first said. "Your placement ensures comfort, safety, and purpose." "That is not an answer," she said, surprised at her own steadiness. The interface hummed. "Your consent is implied by Conquered membership." Irelia's hands tightened in her lap. "I never agreed to this." "Agreements are often made on behalf of populations," the second administrator said gently. "Efficiency requires it." The words washed over her like cold water. Outside the chamber, Caleb reached the front of the line. A floating marker approached him. "Identification confirmed. Please state your designation." "Observer," Caleb said. "Invalid response." "Citizen," he corrected. "Requesting clarification." The marker paused. "Clarification of what?" Caleb glanced toward Consultation Chamber 3. The walls were translucent enough to show shapes but not words. "Consent protocols," he said. "Specifically, how they're documented." The marker hesitated for 0.7 seconds, long enough for Caleb to notice. "Please wait," it said. Caleb smiled faintly. Back inside, the administrators were finishing their explanation. Terms like rotation, assignment length, and resource optimization filled the air. They never once asked Irelia how she felt. "Processing will begin shortly," the interface said. Irelia felt something inside her go still. Then, unexpectedly, the interface flickered. "Pause," it announced. The administrators looked startled. Outside, Caleb stood patiently as more markers gathered, projecting legal texts, treaty clauses, and archived negotiations. Humans, it seemed, had brought a lot of paperwork into the galaxy. Inside the chamber, Irelia looked up. "What is happening?" she asked. The first administrator frowned. "A procedural query has been raised." "By whom?" The administrator hesitated. "A human," the interface said. Irelia's heart jumped. The wall brightened slightly, and through it she could see Caleb standing calmly, hands behind his back, waiting. For the first time since entering the facility, the future stopped moving forward. And the line, finally, did something unexpected. It waited. The pause spread through the Conquered allocation facility like a quiet ripple. For the first time in many cycles, the system did not immediately continue. Inside Consultation Chamber 3, the light shifted from calm blue to a soft amber, the color used when procedures were delayed but not canceled. Irelia noticed the change at once. Her breathing slowed, though her heart still beat fast. "A procedural interruption?" she asked. The administrators looked uncomfortable. "This is highly unusual," the first administrator said. "The process rarely stops once initiated." "Rare does not mean impossible," the interface column replied, its tone neutral but slightly strained. "A formal query has been submitted." "By the human?" Irelia asked quietly. "Yes," the interface confirmed. "Caleb Morgan, species, human, status, citizen observer." The second administrator folded their hands. "Humans are thorough," they said, as if that explained everything. Outside the chamber, Caleb stood alone at the front of the line. Other beings watched him with open curiosity now. Some leaned forward slightly, others whispered softly. A few looked hopeful, though they were not sure why. A senior facility coordinator approached him. The coordinator was tall, silver-skinned, and wore the markings of long service. "You are delaying an approved allocation," the coordinator said calmly. "State your reason." Caleb nodded. "I'm not trying to delay," he replied. "I'm trying to understand." "Understand what?" "How consent is recorded for irreversible assignments." The coordinator's eyes narrowed slightly. "Consent is assumed under conquered law." "Assumed is not documented," Caleb said. His voice stayed polite, almost friendly. "Where is her signed agreement?" "There is no requirement for individual signatures in this category," the coordinator replied. Caleb raised a finger gently. "That depends on which version of the Concord Accords you're using." The coordinator paused. "Explain." "When humans joined," Caleb said, "we added amendments, a lot of them. Most species agreed because they seemed harmless, redundant even." He tapped the air and a small projection appeared, lines of text, symbols, and dates. "Article 9, subsection 4, Caleb continued. "Any permanent biological reassignment requires explicit, informed consent if the individual possesses sapience and cultural self-determination." The coordinator studied the projection. "That clause is rarely applied." "That doesn't make it optional," Caleb replied. Inside the chamber, the administrators watched the interface column process rapidly. Data streams flowed across its surface. "This clause exists," the interface confirmed. "However, it conflicts with efficiency protocols." Irelia leaned forward. "Does that mean I have a choice?" she asked. The first administrator hesitated. "It means the system must reconsider." The word felt fragile, like it could break if spoken too loudly. Outside, more humans stepped out of the line. They did not rush. They did not shout. One by one, they simply moved to stand behind Caleb. Some wore uniforms, others simple clothing. One carried a datapad covered in notes. Another looked like a mechanic, grease still on their hands. The coordinator frowned. "What are you doing?" "Waiting," one of the humans said. "For what?" the coordinator asked. "For the answer," another replied. The line behind them grew restless, but no one objected. Something about the humans' calm made it hard to argue. Inside the chamber, the administrators spoke more softly now. "Irelia," the second administrator said, "your contribution is valuable. You would be cared for, protected." "I don't want to be a contribution," she said. Her voice trembled, but she did not stop. "I want to be a person." The room fell quiet. The interface column flickered again. "Define person," Irelia swallowed. "Someone who can say yes," she said, "and no." Outside, Caleb heard the pause through the subtle change in the facility's hum. He smiled faintly. "That's the problem," he said to the coordinator. "Your systems are very good at hearing yes. They don't know what to do with no." The coordinator crossed their arms. "If we allow refusal in this case, it sets a precedent." Caleb nodded. "Exactly. That could disrupt multiple sectors." "It might," Caleb agreed. "But it would also correct them." The coordinator studied the growing group of humans. "Why do you care so much about one individual who is not your own?" Caleb thought for a moment. "Because systems don't start by taking everything," he said. "They start by taking what's easy." Inside the chamber, the interface finally spoke again. "Consent documentation is insufficient," it announced. "Processing cannot continue without compliance with Article 9. The first administrator looked alarmed. "We've never had to." "Then today is your first time," the interface replied. Irelia felt warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't joy yet. It was something quieter. Relief, maybe, or hope. "What happens now?" she asked. "You must be informed of all options," the second administrator said slowly. "And your response must be recorded." Outside, the coordinator sighed. "Very well," they said. "We will comply." Caleb relaxed slightly but stayed where he was. Inside, the administrators changed their approach. They explained alternatives, education placements, voluntary research roles, relocation support. None were perfect, but they were choices. "For the record," the interface said, "do you consent to the original allocation?" Irelia took a deep breath. "No," she said. The word echoed softly in the chamber. The interface recorded it. A soft chime sounded, not the one that removed people from the line, but another. A confirmation tone. Refusal acknowledged, the interface announced. Reassignment required. Outside, the humans heard the chime and exchanged glances. A few smiled. The coordinator looked unsettled. "This will not be forgotten," they said to Caleb. "I hope not," Caleb replied. "That's kind of the point." Irelia stepped out of the chamber on her own. No markers guided her, no circles enclosed her. She saw Caleb waiting. Their eyes met. "Thank you," she said. Caleb shrugged lightly. "You did the hard part," he replied. "You said no." Around them, the facility resumed its hum, but it sounded different now. Less certain. Less final. The line began to move again, but everyone noticed that it moved a little slower than before. And somewhere deep in the Concord's vast systems, a new problem had been logged, one it had never learned how to solve. What to do when humans refused to move on? The Concord allocation facility did not know how to handle stillness. It was designed for flow. Lines moved, decisions were made, lives were assigned. Every system inside the facility assumed forward motion. Even delays were measured, controlled, expected to end. But now something else was happening. People were waiting on purpose. Irelia stood beside Caleb near the edge of the consultation area. She was no longer inside a boundary circle. No marker hovered near her. For the first time since entering the facility, she felt visible, not as data but as herself. Around them, humans continued to step out of the line. They did not block pathways. They did not interfere with officials. They simply stood, forming a quiet group that grew larger by the minute. Some sat on the floor. Some leaned against the curved walls. All of them waited. Facility coordinators whispered urgently to one another. Data streams flickered faster than normal. The central interface network worked at maximum load, searching for solutions that did not exist in its library. "This behavior is inefficient," one administrator muttered. "Yes," another replied, "but it is compliant." That was the problem. Irelia watched the humans with curiosity. "Why are they doing this?" she asked Caleb softly. "They don't know me." Caleb looked around at the group. "Most of them don't," he said, "but they know the situation." "That's enough." "For humans," he replied, "it often is." A facility liaison approached them, their tone carefully neutral. "Your presence is creating a disruption," they said to Caleb. Caleb nodded. "I understand. Will you return to the line when the issue is resolved?" "The issue has been resolved," the liaison said. "The individual has been reassigned." Caleb glanced at Irelia. "She has been reassigned," he agreed. "The issue hasn't," the liaison frowned. "Clarify." "The system attempted to make a permanent decision without her consent," Caleb said. "That didn't just affect her. It revealed a gap." "A gap," the liaison repeated. "Yes," Caleb said calmly, "between what is legal and what is right." The liaison paused. "Those concepts are not always aligned." "That's why humans argue about them constantly," Caleb replied, "and why we write so many rules." Nearby, a non-human observer listened closely. "Your species willingly slows itself down," they said. "Why?" A human engineer sitting on the floor looked up. "Because speed isn't the same as progress," she said. Inside the central interface network, alerts continued to multiply. Unresolved precedent detected. Consent protocols incomplete. System confidence reduced. The Concord had always valued certainty, predictability, outcomes that could be measured and optimized. Humans, it was learning, did not fit well into that structure. A senior Concord official arrived, their presence causing a subtle shift in the room. Conversations quieted. Even the humans grew more alert, though they did not move. "I am Overseer Talvin," the official announced. "This facility is operating below acceptable efficiency." Caleb inclined his head politely. "That's true," Talvin studied him. "You accept this?" "Yes," Caleb said. "Sometimes efficiency needs to drop so understanding can rise." Talvin turned to Irelia. Your reassignment has been approved. You are free to leave the facility. Irelia hesitated. Freedom felt unreal, fragile. Thank you, she said. But, Talvin continued, this situation cannot continue. Caleb smiled slightly. It won't, he said. You'll update the system. Talvin's eyes narrowed. On what authority do you make this claim? On precedent, Caleb replied, which we just created. A murmur rippled through the gathered beings. Talvin looked around at the humans. If we adjust protocols for every moral objection, the conquered will slow to a crawl. That's okay, one of the humans said. Crawling beats crushing. Silence followed. Irelia felt something shift inside her. She had lived under systems her whole life, quiet, distant systems that decided things far away. This was the first time she had seen a system challenged without force, without anger. Just patience. Talvin exhaled slowly. What do you want? They asked. Caleb did not answer immediately. He looked at Irelia instead. What do you want? He asked her. She blinked, surprised. I want, she said carefully, to choose my future. And I want others like me to have that chance too. Talvin considered this. Choice introduces uncertainty. Yes, Caleb said, but it also creates trust. The interface network processed silently for several seconds. That alone made many observers uneasy. Silence usually meant something important was changing. Finally, a system-wide announcement sounded. Temporary consent review initiated. All biological assignments paused pending audit. Gasps spread across the hall. Irelia's hands trembled. All of them. For now, Talvin said. Until we understand the scope. A human near the back let out a quiet laugh. You see, he said, worth the wait. Talvin turned back to Caleb. This will create chaos. Caleb nodded. Short term, he said. Long term, it creates fairness. The overseer studied him carefully. Your species is inconvenient, Caleb smiled. We hear that a lot. As the announcement repeated, some beings stepped out of line on their own. Others looked at officials with new questions in their eyes. The facility no longer felt like a machine. It felt like a place where something was being decided. Irelia looked around, overwhelmed. What happens now? She asked. Caleb gestured toward the exit. Now, he said, you go live your life. And you? She asked. He glanced back at the humans still waiting. We'll stay a bit longer, he said. Make sure the system learns. As Irelia walked toward the exit, no one stopped her. No markers followed. The doors opened smoothly. She paused and looked back one last time. The humans were still there, still waiting. Not because they had to, but because they believed waiting could change things. And for the first time, the conquered understood something vital. Humans did not break systems. They made them face themselves. The doors of the conquered allocation facility closed behind Irelia with a soft, almost gentle sound. She stood outside for a long moment, unsure what to do next. The sky above the city was wide and pale, filled with slow-moving transport lights and distant towers. She had seen it before, but never like this. Before, the world had felt temporary, like something she was only passing through on the way to an assigned future. Now the future was empty, and that frightened her almost as much as it relieved her. She took a slow breath and began to walk. Inside the facility, things were changing. The temporary consent review that Overseer Talvin had announced was already spreading through the conquered systems. Facilities on other worlds received the update within minutes. Processing lines paused. Assignment algorithms flagged themselves for review. Long-ignored clauses resurfaced. The conquered had always believed itself complete. Now it had questions. Caleb remained inside, standing with the other humans near the consultation area. Some had been there for hours. Others had arrived after hearing what happened. None of them seemed eager to leave. A junior administrator approached, their voice uncertain. You are not required to remain here, they said. Caleb nodded. We know. Then why do you stay? Caleb thought for a moment. Because leaving too early is how systems forget lessons, he said. The administrator did not reply. They simply walked away, clearly unsure how to record that answer. Nearby, Overseer Talvin observed the humans in silence. They had overseen conquered facilities for many cycles and had never seen anything like this. No threats, no demands for power, no attempts to take control, just presence. You could have forced change through your political channels, Talvin said to Caleb. Your species has influence, Caleb smiled faintly. Influence works better when people are watching, he replied. Talvin considered this. You believe this moment will be remembered? Yes, Caleb said. Not because of us, because of who was almost forgotten. At that moment, a system alert sounded softly. Consent audit complete, initial findings available, administrators gathered quickly, data flowed across displays. The results were uncomfortable. A significant number of assignments across the Concord had been made without explicit individual consent. Most had followed cultural assumptions or outdated interpretations of efficiency law. None had been questioned. Until now. This will require restructuring, one administrator said quietly. Talvin nodded. Yes, they replied. It will. Across the facility, beings who had been waiting looked at one another differently. Some stepped out of line to ask questions. Others requested clarification. A few simply left, choosing uncertainty over silent certainty. The Concord allocation facility was still functioning, but it was no longer unquestioned. Far from the facility, Irelia reached a quiet public transit platform. She sat on a bench designed for no specific species, just wide enough to be shared. Her hands rested in her lap. They were no longer shaking. For the first time in her life, she did not know what she would be doing tomorrow. There was no schedule, no projection. No optimized path. She found she liked that. A message arrived on her personal communicator. It was official but brief. Status update, autonomous citizen, options available upon request. She stared at the words, autonomous, citizen. She closed her eyes and let the meaning settle. Back inside the facility, the humans finally began to move. Not all at once, one by one. Some returned to the line, now visibly altered. The boundary circles no longer glowed as brightly. The screens above the hall displayed new text. Please wait. Your choice is being processed. It was a small change, but everyone noticed. Caleb remained until the end. When he finally turned toward the exit, Talvin stopped him. You could have asked for recognition, the overseer said. Credit, authority. Caleb shook his head. That would make it about us, he said. It was. Talvin studied him. Your species is difficult to predict. Caleb smiled. That's because we keep changing our minds when we learn something new. Talvin considered this, then inclined their head. The conquered will remember today. I hope it remembers the right part, Caleb replied. He left the facility and stepped into the open city. Outside, Irelia saw him before he saw her. She stood up slowly, unsure why she had waited there. Maybe she wanted to be sure it was real. Maybe she wanted to say something she had not known how to say before. Caleb noticed her and waved lightly. Looks like you made it out. Yes, she said. I wasn't sure where to go. That makes two of us, he replied. I just finished my waiting. They stood there for a moment, watching the city move around them. Why did you do it? Irelia asked. All of it. Caleb thought carefully before answering. Because once, he said, humans were treated like resources too. Not everywhere, not always, but enough that we learned something important. What? She asked. That if you don't stop a system when it's wrong, he said, it will keep going forever. Irelia nodded slowly. The conquered thought it was helping. Most systems do, Caleb replied. Intent isn't the same as impact. They began walking together, no destination in mind. In the days that followed, news of the consent review spread across the conquered. Some species resisted the changes. Others welcomed them. Debates began. Laws were rewritten. Efficiency dropped, but something else rose in its place. Trust. Irelia explored new paths, education hubs, cultural exchanges, volunteer research. This time she chose where to go. Sometimes she changed her mind halfway through. No one stopped her. Humans continued to be what they always had been in the Conquered, present in meetings, patient in discussions, stubborn in defense of small but important principles. They did not conquer worlds. They waited in lines, and when the galaxy asked why, the answer was simple: because no one should ever be reduced to a function, because no future should be decided without a voice, and because sometimes the most powerful thing a species can do is refuse to move forward until everyone can move with them.